Martí. I am the president of this college, and I am delighted that we are entering probably our 5th or 6th year of the Presidential Lecture Series. The Presidential Lecture Series were devised in order for us to bring some of the academic community in contact with our own academic community and the community as a whole. The organization or the structure of the Presidential Lecture Series is that in the fall we have a distinguished professor or a luminary from the City University of New York, not from our college. And we invite that individual to come and give about a 40 to 50-minute presentation with questions and answers. In the spring, we have one of our own. And I am delighted that today we have an individual who came to us almost 40 years ago as an adjunct professor. His hair was really brown. He was as handsome then as he is today. But he was a person who had come in as an adjunct faculty member, fresh from a master's in fine arts from Yale University. And he started, as a matter of fact, the master's in fine arts is in painting and architecture, and very quickly he developed into a videographer. And he has had a very distinguished career, not only as a faculty member at this institution, but as an individual of prominence in the art world. He does something that is fascinating to me. He celebrates artists. He goes and does documentaries of very important artists who are either contemporary or close to being contemporary. And he has done documentaries with Warhol, Lichtenstein, Basquiat, Koons, Sherman, and many others. Now, these are the major figures of art in this world at this time. And Paul has had the ability to get close to them, to understand them, to appreciate them, and then to reflect their personalities in video. He has a number of artistic activities under his belt. He was the first producer of the Inner Tube, which by itself may not mean anything to you, but those of us who are old enough know that this was the first cable series that was produced in cable vision and in cable art. The second series was the half-hour programs entitled Artifice. His third series was the New York Music New York. And most recently, he started the Arts New York. The Arts New York is a video series of contemporary art. Began in 1979. It is unique and has a focus on the visual arts and brings art and artists exhibitions to the broad public interested in the latest developments of the New York art scene. Needless to say, we're very proud of him. Now, he's joining a group of individuals who are distinguished in their own. From our own, I'm just going to mention ours, because I'm being selfish today. This is our party. This is not CUNY's party. And we've had with us Kaf Dalla, we've had Martin Karknowski, we have had Pat Allaire, we have had Charles Martin, and the first one, the inaugural, was Tony Pippolo. These are individuals who we believe are individuals who represent not only the teaching aspects of our institution, but the scholarship that takes place here. I have to thank a number of people for arranging this. First of all, the committee. As you very well know, we live in a sort of communistic environment in the academic world. Everything is done by committee. Right? So we are in a situation where we have to choose our speakers through a committee. And for this time, we had Dr. Karen Steele, Dr. Sheena Gillespie, who's been there from the very beginning. I see her in the back. Peter Gray, I don't think Peter is here. But Kenneth Pearl is here. I saw him. Kenneth, thank you very much for your input and for your wisdom in selecting these very fine individuals. I also want to thank Millie Conte, because Millie has put all of this arrangement all by herself, and it has been an arduous task. In addition to everything else that she does in the office, she's now taken on the responsibility for the lecture series. So it is with great pleasure that I introduce to you Professor Paul Tschinkel, who is going to give you a presentation on a very important artist, which I'm going to leave for him to introduce, Cindy Sherman. Thank you, Paul.
Hello. Thank you very much, President Marty, and thank you very much for coming this evening. I also want to thank my chairperson, Dr. Wien, who put me up to this, or I should say put me up for this, and for my colleagues for coming this afternoon, and to all of you. Thank you very much. I've been at Queensborough since 1969, and over the years have done much work here. I have created a whole body of work that is basically documentaries about art and artists, and the most recent one of these is on Cindy Sherman. Now, Cindy Sherman is a very interesting artist. She is a photographer artist. She's not really a photographer, and there's really a fine distinction between a photographer artist and an artist who makes photographs. So at any rate, Cindy Sherman began in 1970, in late 70s, to make pictures of herself. Instead of making pictures of other people, taking pictures of other people, she took pictures of herself. In which she played various characters, played various roles, and over the years has made many photographs in many different fashions, in many different characters. On this particular program that I'm going to be showing you today, you will see an early exhibition of her work made in 1981, and it became part of this Art New York series that I've sort of started a number of years ago. And then in 2000, she had another exhibition, so I decided to revisit her, as it were. And you will see quite a difference between her early work and then the work that she's done relatively recently. But at any rate, so I first started out as a painter. I came to New York in the early 60s, mid-60s. And, and I came to New York from New Haven, and, as did also my colleagues from Yale. And we were going to come to New York and become the next Jackson Pollock, and the next Picasso, etc. At any rate, I had exhibitions. I worked with other artists, and then eventually turned to video. And in 1972, I decided to buy a video portapack. Some of my friends were fooling around with video. I was fooling around with film a little bit, and then I decided to try this, and make what is so-called video art. Now, video art. What is video art? I don't know. Video art is art made by videos made by artists, right? So it is unlike television. It is just artists looking at various bits of phenomena around them and making pieces that we would not normally see on television. So artists would take a camera and move it around in particular kind of ways, et cetera, et cetera. So I was fooling around with that, and I had a couple of exhibitions in galleries, with video pieces. I remember my first piece was a series of monitors that went down on the floor of a gallery. It was called Video Portraits, and what did I do? I videotaped some of my best friends, and and put them on television. And they would stay on television, and on this television on the floor, in a gallery. And so you would look at little movements in their faces, you know, you would move, you know, you get very comfortable if you sit in front of a video camera for a while. So, you know, little things like that. You would look at their eyes blinking, and normally things that you would not normally see, right? In about 1974, I decided to say this is not the place to put video. A natural place for video is, of course, on television, right? So in 1974, I went to Manhattan Cable, and they said, well, listen, we have a lot of free time on Manhattan Cable. So why don't you put some programming on, you know, that you show in galleries? I said, great idea. So I went to Manhattan Cable, and I arranged a time for my programs, and you know, and I had a weekly show which ran for about 10 years. The early programs dealt with sort of conceptual pieces where I would sort of look at things that we would normally not look at. For example, one of the pieces that I did was opening and closing a door. I had a spring-loaded door in my loft, and then I would open the door, you know, and a little bit, and it'd go pshum. Then I would open the door some more, and it'd go pshum. Then I open the door some more, and it'd go zoom. You know, little events like that, which we normally don't pay attention to, but you know, which were rather interesting, right? So so I had made these pieces, and then eventually, other friends of mine came to my studio, and we made other pieces. So I got them involved. You know, they made little events, made little ads and things like that. And you know, eventually the artists, you know, were on my program, and we made sort of a whole series of programs. In 1979, it occurred to me that some of these artists, friends of mine, would like to be on my programs. That would like to be in my programs would you know, like to be covered. They wanted me to cover their exhibitions. So I took the camera and I went into some galleries and museums and taped the exhibitions. And then this became then the first of the Art New York series. Number 3058 is Cindy Sherman. So over the years, I've made a total of 63 programs that cover artists, that interview artists, etc. Okay? So why don't we go to our first program here, this one here, and look at Cindy Sherman.
Cindy Sherman first came to prominence in the early 1980s when she did this series called Film Stills that spotlights the complexities of the female persona as seen through the lens of the media. With photographs she takes of herself, she impersonates various characters and shows us the numerous roles women play in our world. In her pictures, she depicts women as housewife, sex symbol, lover, seductress, victim, monster, and more, and causes us to reflect upon how we perceive women. Over more than 2 decades, her work continues to evolve and fascinate in an ever-changing and insatiable art world.
Well, I mean, from this vantage point, it looks all very familiar, except at the time, nobody that I knew of was taking this adventure into really an investigation of the behavior and the female behavior, stylistic norms, fabricated realities that women were to, had to plug into, the expertise of almost all women about flirtatious behavior, sexual behavior, makeup, dress, what kind of attire and mannerisms were read in our society as what, all generated and defined by film and also, film and other popular media. So she just embodied this thing in a natural, instinctive way and understood it was serious.
This is Cindy Sherman, a young photographer whose work is generating interest among the New York art crowd. From November 7th to 28th, 1981, an exhibition of Sherman's work took place at Metro Pictures Gallery in Soho. There were 10 large pictures in the show. Each was elongated and measured 2 feet by 4 feet. Sherman does self-portraits, but her art is not about herself. In each photograph, Sherman acts out a fictional moment. In pictures like this one, props and expression suggest a drama, but it is vague and never defined. What comes across is not a specific narrative, but rather a vague mood or feeling. Will the phone ring? Does she await bad news? We can't be sure what is happening, but there is a sense of longing and loneliness. Although Sherman does not announce the fact that her photographs are self-portraits, knowledge of this makes her show even more fascinating. She is a chameleon, and one must marvel at her ability to change her persona through the use of wigs, makeup, clothing, lighting, and facial expression. The origin of this series of photographs was a project in which Sherman meant to comment on the centerfolds found in men's magazines. The longitudinal format of the pictures and the preponderance of passive, recumbent poses reflects this source. What Sherman strives to do is to undermine the erotic content of such conventions by introducing disconcerting elements. In this photograph, the black sheets emphasize the milky skin, blonde hair, red lipstick, and nightgown. The image should be erotic, but up close we discover the figure is covered with sweat. She looks uncomfortable or maybe even ill. According to Sherman's vague scenario, it is a woman suffering from a hangover.
Well, I've zoomed into the figure so that the figure really fills up the frame, and there are less props. I'm more concerned with subtleties of details, like the lighting and maybe what the floor is, or a bit of a piece of furniture that sticks in. And looking back on the work, I didn't realize it while I was doing it, but they're more emotional now. I think that's because having to go into that kind of a close-up, I had to show more with the expression or with the type of character that was, and make the character a little bit more human rather than just some stereotyped movie actress type of character.
And a lot of her work is pictures of solitude, and I suppose a lot of the film stills are too, but the signal of 50s, 40s film noir or something are so strong that it became almost generic images. Whereas the horizontals were an image that really had no antecedent except maybe the Playboy centerfold, and where the sense of this large image of women who convincingly were utterly unaware of being looked at, which is a convention of, it's a convention more of movies than of anything. And the most powerful impression was one of solitude. It was almost of like, of seeing something you're not supposed to see. And not being a voyeur, because because you're right up on it. You know, it's like, you know, it isn't like you're looking through a keyhole. You know, and that there is a very strong feeling of identification. I mean, the acting, though very subtle, is extremely poignant, and you have a sense of a kind of sympathetic and empathetic identification with these women and girls.
And then again, she's done completely abstract, almost painterly surfaces of residue. Sometimes they're called the vomit pictures, the revulsion, but they in fact are full of pinks and blues, and you know, but what it is kind of melted materials and candies and food that is, it just wavers between beauty and hideousness.
An important thing to keep in mind about her work, and which anyone can discover for themselves if they just bother to look twice or three times at the work, is that there is never a realistic illusion that is carried out. There's never a documentary conviction. Everything she has done in the way of artifice is visible as artifice.
I have two favorites. Initially in the series, the blonde with her head thrown back was just so fabulous that you couldn't help but care about her. But as time went on, I didn't have a particular personal relationship with that character. And of course, they're in the gallery for a long time, so you see them all the time. And standing in a room of those characters and looking around you, you could really start screaming, and you could get quite frightened, you know, at the intensity of the personas, their personalities of some of them. So the one I like very much is this one in a kind of Gucci-looking red silk blouse, looking very professional, womanish, leaning forward with perfectly applied thick lipstick and glasses and a glass chain and a very well coiffed hair, and she's like a pro, and she's just going to make you do something, make you buy something, tell you what you better think about whatever it is. And she is one terrifying but not unfamiliar character, and I really like her a lot.
If you were to compare her to another artist, who comes to mind?
Rembrandt.
Really?
Yes, who was another maker of fictions about people, and with a theatrical approach, and a love of dress up, and of you know, I think some of Rembrandt's paintings of historical women, Lucrezia or Juno or Flora, mythical women, could almost be Cindy Sherman.
For me, it's great fun to make these programs. I have a chance to go into someone's studio, talk to them about their work. In this case, the photographs. I've covered many artists who have now died. Did a program on Alice Neal, a very famous portraitist, on Jean-Michel Basquiat and others. Is this on? Yes, and others, and you know, and so I feel I'm capturing history, you know, and you know, and these programs that I've made now, 63 of them or 62 of them, the latest of which is on Robert Mapplethorpe, you know, are really educational tools. I mean, at first it was like fun, you know. These artists came to my studio, we did this and this and that. But eventually, you know, I realized that, you know, this was sort of important information that needed to go out there. So in 1979, 1980, I decided to make this Art New York series, and I would send these programs out to colleges and universities across the country. And all of a sudden, you know, art schools in San Francisco, in Los Angeles, or wherever, were able to see these artists often at work and in their studios, you know, directly. Instead of reading about the artists in magazines, which is okay, now that we're able to actually listen to them talk about their work, it was like having an artist visiting artist program. So they're very useful. I think Professor Wien introduced a course on contemporary art here at Queensborough, and and she shows these programs, and these artists come into the classroom and talk, which is a very it's just a very interesting thing to make the art come alive. So over the years, I've done many of these, and Cindy Sherman is a very fascinating artist who, by the way, is very shy, and we were able to capture her or do an interview with her. And Mark Miller, who sits in the audience, did this interview for me in 1982, I think it was, and subsequently she has not been interviewed anywhere. And which I can sort of understand. In other words, if you are the subject of your work and you take on all these personalities, all these images of yourself, which one is the real Cindy Sherman? So in a way, I think she gave us the interview very early on because she was just starting out as an artist. Now she doesn't do that, and she doesn't want to destroy the myth of herself, as it were, right? So I'm happy to have shown this program today because, after all, this is Women's History Month. So, and she addresses the what? I'm sorry, what? Yes, and she addresses so many issues that pertain to women. What kind of roles they play. Well, as you can see, right? Anyway, so I have a great deal of fun doing these programs. As I said, I love going into the artist studios, and occasionally I still have the desire to pick up a paintbrush, especially when I smell all that oil paint in artist studios, and start painting. But I've given that up. Finished. I remember driving one day, delivering a painting in Connecticut. So I strapped it to the top of my car, right? So I was driving along. All of a sudden, this wind came along and ripped the painting off the top of my car into the side of the highway. And I said, no, I will stick with video. That's why I decided to do, one among other reasons why I decided to do video. And video, of course, at that time was very primitive, very primitive. The camera was a big camera, and you had to carry a deck on the side, some of you, I'm sure, had done that. Today, video is, of course, very, very high tech, very efficient, very, very simple, very small, and everyone has a video recorder. But back then, that was not the case. So anyway, I think it was a good decision for me to do video, and it's been very, 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 very. It's been a great experience for me, and I must say that it's easier to handle. You have sound, you have images, you have movement, you have narration, you have lots of things that video has that an ordinary painting doesn't have. So over the years, I've made many of these programs, and many of these programs were as a result of, being a faculty member here at Queensborough, and, I sort of think of Queensborough as my Medicis, so I feel very good about my connection with my work and working here at Queensborough, etc. Now, do you have any questions?
Before you start that, I think we need to say that we have an individual here who does something that's very, very interesting. That is, most artists are representing something. Most artists are immersed in their art. Very, very rarely, they come out and they are on the other side of the camera. And what you're doing in terms of this particular number 58,
yes,
is I think it's almost like a mirror of a mirror.
Yes, yes.
You're capturing the
Yes.
artist that captures yourself.
Yes.
Captures images
Right.
that are made up. And it's a wonderful way of putting it together. I really think it's very, very important work. And if you have a chance, please go back into the library. It has videos. And you can see the Mapplethorpe video is an extremely important one. And you've done a number of them that I think need to be seen. And I think people do see them. So we have treasure here. So I have never been called the Medici. My Italian roots are there somewhere.
Well,
I appreciate that, but you are the Medici. You are the one who gives us the ability to be here. So thank you very much.
thank you.